This sitting is resumed. Yeah, you got suspend standing orders.
Personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, or replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day sitting. Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 10, sir. In the name of the Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the Value Added Tax Amendment Bill 2023.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today just to give very brief remarks in relation to this value-added tax amendment, given all that we have seen, sir, certainly in the course of the last year, post-pandemic, as part of government's effort to try to continue to ease Barbadians. You will note, sir, or recall that in this chamber I delivered a ministerial statement which covered not just this particular element, but a series of measures that was announced to take effect from August 1st until the end of January, August 1st, 2022, until the end of January of 2023, of which one of them related to the reduction of the VAT that the government would collect on the first 250,000 kilowatt hours for residential properties in Barbados. And that reduction, sir, was from 17.5% down to 7.5%, representing, sir, obviously, sir, 10 percentage points in relation to the relief that was given to Barbadians. This was important, sir, because we felt at the time as energy prices were rising, we had issues with respect to accessing critical supplies. You will recall, sir, that at some point last year, there was disruption to the supply chain within the context of the region and being able to source some of our energy products for the country. This was taking place as we were trying to build additional capacity within the context of the island to be able to withstand the issues that we were facing. And therefore, not just that physical disruption with the passage of a hurricane last summer, but the global environment in which we were operating, sir, was quite uncertain. And therefore, we took this particular measure to help, of many, to help Barbadians, sir, many of our constituents, all of our constituents, on the first 250 kilowatt hours, to bring significant relief to every household, sir, in this country. What we are proposing to do today, sir, is not just to bring the piece of legislation to specifically cover that period, but equally, sir, to extend this particular measure until the end of September 30th, 2023, which is a further, sir, 8 months with respect to being able to have Barbadians enjoy that relief. Why are we doing this, sir? At this particular point in time, whilst we have seen, sir, some moderation with respect to oil prices internationally, we are very clear and conscious, sir, that certain elements of the economy, sir, still needs to be protected at this time. And we believe that it is important that we give certainty with respect to consumers, given, notwithstanding that things have reasonably returned to normal. And I say normal, sir, in inverted commas, bold and everything, sir, because normal today is certainly not normal in the context of pre-COVID. But we've seen some settlement with respect to what is happening globally. Things are tending or trending in the direction that we would like to see it in, more, generally speaking. But we believe that we are in a position to be able to do this, continue this particular relief measure, whilst at the same time the government continues to work with the private sector to determine the completion of the other element in relation to the compact as it relates to prices, sir, and how that would evolve, sir, over time. You would recall, sir, that those 44 items that we agreed at the time to limit the markups of between 12 and 15%, sir, those are now subject to negotiation again with the private sector to see where they will land in respect of those items, sir. We agreed at the time, sir, that there were critical elements within the basket for which we will forego duties and VAT in relation to those that would attract that. And therefore, once those agreements are settled, sir, we will be able to come and speak in a more fulsome way in relation to that. But this is the one thing that certainly is totally within the context of the government's purview to be able to do. And therefore, we are agreeing to do this in this way until the end of September 2023, which will bring continued relief, sir, to Barbadians, which I think at this time, sir, all of us would be happy to hear. What we propose also in the bill, sir, is that when we review coming on to the end, because at the end of September, sir, is when we will be approaching the midterm review, which was normally presented in Parliament, sir. We will obviously, as we have done with everything in the past, make a very clear determination as to whether the measure would continue. And therefore, Clause 18, sir, Subclause 18 in the bill, rather than having to come back and do a specific debate, the Minister may by order extend the expiration date as referred to there, if it is deemed, sir, that that is the policy position to be continued at that time. And subsequently, and obviously, sir, once we conclude the other discussions, which I know the Honourable Member for St. James Central has been having with the business community along with the Minister responsible for business, as well as the Honourable Member for St. James South. Once those discussions have been concluded, we will, of course, bring the appropriate legislation to be able to put into effect what happens there. But similarly, we will be in a position then to if we are required to make any further adjustments, we would propose to do something very similar so as not to be able to have a smoother implementation with respect to where it is. So we've had to give, obviously, sir, today is February 7th. So we did have some exchange of information with the Barbados Lighting Power to alert them that we were indeed going to be extending this, and therefore the bills that they will send out, obviously post January 30th, would reflect the continuation of the measure as it relates to the billing with respect to electricity relief on electricity bills. And just for the avoidance of any doubt, sir, because I recognize that these days headlines tend to convey a completely different story from what is actually written in much of the press, the copy. All electricity consumption, sir, above 250 kilowatt hours remains at 17.5% as before. And therefore, all we are doing here is extending the current provision in relation to what is happening with respect to fuel, to the charging of VAT on electricity bills in order to deliver relief for Barbadians. Equally, sir, you would recall that, and I know the Ministry of Energy is currently in consultation and looking at the information, but I just want to make it clear to the Chamber that you would recall, sir, that we had put a cap on the VAT that would be collected on fuel prices. During the course of the year, those fuel prices came down such that it rendered effectively the cap ineffective because the prices did not meet the threshold to be able to trigger the cap. That proposal was, came into effect again August 1st until January 30th. So obviously we're in February. The prices are below where will trigger the cap, and therefore the Ministry of Energy will advise whether or not that is something that needs also to be continued given the trajectory for oil prices in the future. But as with everything, as this government has done consistently, we have put measures in place, sir. We have monitored, and at the appropriate time, if decisions have to be made about extending relief, we will do so given the context within which we are operating. And therefore, this government, sir, continues, and I give the commitment to all who wish to hear, that the government continues, sir, to not just deliver relief where it is needed, but our strategy is intended to make sure, sir, that we can build as much economic resilience as possible. We can deliver as much critical interventions in the economy as may be required. But at some point, sir, it means that persons must literally, really, as they will say, sir, where the rubber hits the road, be in a position to make decisions about investment, whether it's investment at the personal level, sir, with respect to housing, into small business, and then equally, sir, as businesses expand, that we believe that the things that we've put into place will be able to help drive growth, drive employment, in order to make sure then that we can transition out of this post-pandemic, post-war period in a way then that allows us to be able to move forward. And so, sir, these very brief amendments to the VAT Act is intended to continue to deliver relief for every Barbadian household for another 8 months, sir. And therefore, it is important that we recognize that whilst we are not yet out of the woods, as you would say, the government continues to monitor and to make decisions that we believe will help benefit ordinary Barbadians. And so, sir, with those very few words, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that you do not report his honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable member for Christchurch Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Value-Added Tax Amendment Act 2023.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Mr. Speaker, order number 6, in the name of the Honorable AG, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the second reading of the Minor Offences Amendment Bill 2023.
Honorable Member St. Joseph.
A fact lost on many people, particularly those who are not immersed in the criminal law, that on our statute books we actually have something called the Minor Offences Act. It is at Chapter 137 of the laws of Barbados. And if, sir, you look at the Minor Offences Act, which was passed in 1998, at the top of the act, sir, it is described as an act to revise the law in relation to certain minor offenses. And so this statute talks about people who are loitering. There's even a provision which says that a person who, being able either by labor or by other lawful means to maintain himself or herself, or his wife or his or her child or children, willfully refuses or neglects to do so, and thereby becomes burdensome or renders his wife or his or her child or children burdensome upon national assistance or other public funds set apart for the relief of the poor, that person, sir, commits an offense. I'm sure most Barbadians have never heard of any such statute. But it has been on our laws since 1998. This is a piece of legislation that covers a whole raft of relatively minor offenses, which by their nature don't allow for a single large statute. This Minor Offences Act, sir, has not been amended at any time since being passed in 1998. But we are proposing today to add certain provisions to this Minor Offences Act, thereby amending it, to provide for the treatment under the law of a particular nuisance, and that nuisance, sir, relates to the flying of kites at night with what we call a bull, and which is nothing more than a device attached to a kite to make noise. Mr. Speaker, I grew up in St. George, and I loved to fly kites. And as I got a little older, I was able to make my own kite. And there was something, sir, almost hypnotic about seeing your kite sway in the sky and the bull making that buzzing sound in a strong breeze. Easter is just a few weeks away from here, and Easter was the time when every Bajan boy engaged in the pastime of flying kites. That was perhaps the highlight of our Easter holiday. And sir, it is true, it would be pointless to deny it. In those days, sir, we used to stake out kites. And it all had to do with whether your kite was so well built that it would pass the test of endurance and still be flying in the sky tomorrow. And those who were especially skillful might have a kite that could stay up for 2 or 3 days. There was a whole history, sir, surrounding the flying of kites. But I would venture to say, sir, that at no time as the young Bajan men enjoyed that particular pastime was there a view to causing a deliberate annoyance to individuals. And if, in that era, an annoyance was caused, certainly the boys that I grew up with would be apologetic, and they would go and take down the kite, sir. In recent times, what has become a persistent bother to many Barbadians is what we used to find pleasurable, entertaining, and relaxing a long time ago. In those days, sir, the kites were not monster kites, they were modest kites. But today, Mr. Speaker, and for quite some time, we have the phenomena of individuals who make kites and stake them out at night. And they hover over individuals' residences, making a loud and troublesome noise. Now, Mr. Speaker, I know there are some who will say that Barbadians have become too soft. Perhaps some will say we've become too sensitive, and that things that didn't trouble us in yesteryear have all of a sudden begun to rile us up and cause us to behave in a way that is, some would say, an overreaction. I'm not going to dispute, sir, that the attitudes of Barbadians towards things has changed. But it is an absolute fact, Mr. Speaker, that there are individuals who are forced to suffer under the burden of the loudest of noises straight through the night, in a way, sir, that it affects their ability to sleep. It affects their ability to function in normal ways. It affects, Mr. Speaker, their health. Now, some will say, and some have said, people have pulled me one side and say, man, we ain't got better things to do than to try to stop people from flying kites. First of all, sir, this Barbados Labour Party administration has no interest in stopping people from flying kites. In my constituency, sir, at Easter, we look forward to our celebration of the kite-flying heritage of Barbados, where we build, my constituents, I mostly just spectate and try to up it when I can. And we build kites of 26 feet in diameter and 30 feet in diameter. We celebrate our kite-flying heritage. And this administration, of which we are all a part, has absolutely no interest in rooting out a wonderful part of Barbados' culture and heritage. But what we do have an interest in, sir, is making sure that our society operates in a way that has a balance. It is almost, sir, like a situation where in the neighborhood somebody might be keeping a little too much noise with a birthday fete, and you come and say, man, you know, see if you could turn down the music a little bit, because some of us who didn't get invited to the party, we want to sleep. It's about finding balance, sir. If I go back to my jurisprudence, and I think it was the School of American Realism, and it had to do with satisfying the various interests in a society with a minimum of friction and waste. And without trying to be too highbrow, all that concept means is that the law and legislatures must balance what are sometimes competing interests. And perhaps the balance will not be a perfect balance, but you try to bring some semblance of balance and reasonableness so as to minimize friction between the contending parties and to minimize waste also between the contending parties. And, sir, that is exactly what, through hundreds of letters to many of us in here, through scores of letters to the press, through a large number of complaints made on calling programs, that is exactly what a significant section of the Barbadian society is asking for. None of them have said, ban kite flying. All they've said is, we need to use the arm of government to bring some balance. So yes, people have a right to enjoy their heritage and to build on that heritage. But it has to be done in such a way that it still respects the rights of individuals. So, sir, some will say, man, women should be working on this and there are more important things and we got to deal with crime and violence and so on. And we're dealing with all those things. But for an elderly lady, like my mother, or an elderly gentleman like many other, some of you will know them, they'll be in your constituencies. While all of these things that a government is called to deal with are important, something as simple, sir, as removing a dreadful annoyance from over the heads of those individuals is important to those sufferers. Now, there are medically trained people in this chamber. I'm not one of them. But my simple research has told me that disturbing an individual's sleep in this way can have some of the most deleterious consequences. And we don't think about them, you know. We don't think about them. You know, when I was at university, I had a Walkman, and I was being cool. And everywhere then I had on my Walkman and my headphones, and And, no, sir, I don't know, but if I don't hear as well as I feel I should. And it caused me to wonder whether what I so enjoyed as my pastime might not today be having an effect on my hearing. But at the time, I didn't think about it. Maybe if I had, I wouldn't have. The point I'm making is that there are things that we take for granted, but the impact on our health can be so severe and debilitating that the sufferer cries out for the assistance of the state. A person's inability to sleep, to rest, is sometimes as horrible as if you're breaking the house and committed some other offense against them. Where are we in government, sir? Where are we in government? When we took the decision to represent people, we did not say we are here to deal with only the big things. In fact, sir, think about when your constituents come to you, some of the things that they come to you about, you may say they're really quite small. In the scheme of things, they're small. But for that individual who has to endure whatever it is they're going through, it is a major thing for which they cry out for help. I wish government, perhaps I should put it another way, it would be a wrong thing for government to take on an aspect where we felt, as members of parliament, that we were only here to deal with big ticket items. When I canvassed my constituents, they didn't tell me that they wanted me to deal with big ticket items only. As their representative, they expect that I have to deal with all of the issues that concern them. And they may not concern anybody else, but it concerns them. So for those who feel that we should be focusing on the cost of living and the cost of energy and all of these other things, for those who feel that, I challenge them and say that a society is made up of many different component parts. But we are judged not just by how we deal with the big things and the victories, we are also judged by how we treat to what some would call the least, the smallest, the most insignificant of issues. Mr. Speaker, the issue is not a small one. And at some point in time, perhaps we have to sit down as a society and say, we have to deal with this thing called noise pollution. And I'm sure that that time will come. Because I've also had calls saying, AG, the motorbikes, them just keep enough noise in we head. AG, the car horns. AG, this, AG, that. Sometimes you worry that you've opened a little Pandora's box. But we can't be afraid to open the Pandora's box. We have to tackle these issues as they arise, when they arise, and try to do good for the broadest sector of Barbados. Mr. Speaker, I reiterate, this is not about stopping our young men from flying kites. We want to encourage that part of Bajan culture. I hate to see nothing. At Easter, I do not want to see a bat kite anywhere. In fact, growing up, and I believe other members of this chamber would relate to it, when you saw somebody with a bat kite, you used to laugh at him. In the first place, it never had enough cord.
Ain't got no tail either.
Ain't got no tail. It never lasted past one day, one afternoon. There's a rich history of kite flying. There's a rich history of kite making, and long may it last. I repeat it, this government is not interested in stopping people from pursuing that pastime. It kept me happy all through the crop season. I made more trash kites than anything else. My mother used to beg me to come out the campground. And as fast as they mash up, you get you throw the exercise book, cut the little slits and make another one. And you grew when you got better, and kite flying was something exciting. I want to encourage that. I want our young men to see this as a rich part of our history, and I want them to seize it and accept it as a wholesome thing that they can and should do. But all we're saying is, whatever we do in our society, there are going to be restrictions on our ability to enjoy it, because we must balance the competing interests with a minimum of friction and waste. I'm sure I have colleagues in this chamber who drive very, very powerful cars. When they start out, you know, you feel, you can hear the engine, you know what I'm talking about. You hear, brrr. And I feel that he would like to be able to travel at 150 miles an hour, because I believe his vehicle could do it. But he also understands that he has a responsibility in a society to enjoy himself while tempering that enjoyment so as to satisfy the legitimate needs and concerns of other people. And we do it in everything we do. Every part of human endeavor is that balancing. So, sir, we've engaged with a wide cross-section of Barbadians, and I want to thank the Law Reform Commission, because we've been trying to deal with so many pieces of legislation that the Chief Parliamentary Counsel's office becomes inundated. Drafting a law is not just putting together some words on paper. If that was the case, anybody could do it. I hear people drafting laws up and down Barbados these days. I hear so. But we know that when we engage in the exercise of lawmaking, the very first thing that the place we have to start is, what's the policy? to inform that lawmaking exercise. What is the policy? What's the policy position that we take? What is it that takes us to this place where we feel that we have to have a law in relation to it? And the Law Reform Commission did a lot of that work for us. They spoke with individuals. They considered what it would look like. And they did a tremendous amount of work in helping us to get where we are. And even though we treat this as a minor offense, a lot of work went into it. Now, what does this minor offense amendment say? I've said it is intended to stop you from flying a kite with a bull at night. So what's night for this purpose? Between 7 in the night and 6 in the morning. And we think that that is reasonable, so that at 7, please, sir, please, madam, if you want to fly a kite all night, just make sure that it does not have any noise-making apparatus. You can keep the kite up in the air. Come back and look for it the next morning. But if it has that noise-making apparatus, sir, then you are running afoul of the law. So take it down by 7, or so alter it that at 7, nobody has any noise concerns as far as your kite is concerned. Now, if you breach the law, then, of course, there are consequences to follow. A person who breaches this particular statute can find themselves faced with a criminal penalty. Now, let me say, sir, that we've made it quite clear from 2018 that we are not a lick and lock up government. That is not how we approach the matter of law enforcement. And wherever possible, we have provided a mechanism where individuals can receive a ticket for having committed a particular criminal offense, and they pay the fine. Nobody has to go to court. The state has been able to exact a penalty from you. You feel hopefully sanctioned. The sanction that you will suffer, hopefully it is dissuasive enough that you don't repeat the conduct, but it does not trigger an involvement of our judicial system. Now, that is, in our view, a reasonable way of approaching things. It isn't every offense, it isn't every time you breach the law that you need to drag yourself before the court. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we have way too many offenses. The Prime Minister constantly says that our law was burnished in a crucible that was Victorian in nature, where every time you stepped off and broke a law, you had to face the consequences of jail time. We're moving a modern Barbados away from that. So you can get a ticket. Plain and simple. You get a ticket, you pay the fine, and that's the end of the matter. On the other hand, though, if you should challenge that and say, oh, it wasn't my kite, any of those kind of things, it wasn't me, try to find a defense. If you don't pay the fine, sir, then you will go before the court. And when you go before the court, you may then find yourself liable for a more significant penalty. And that penalty, sir, on summary conviction, a fine of $500 or imprisonment for 6 months. Now, we've had a whole set of talk about, is the $500 fine sufficient? Sir, it is sometimes difficult to measure whether a fine is going to be dissuasive or not. But there's a reason why we put this, why we decided to treat this kite flying issue under the Minor Offences Act, because we say that in the scheme of things, it is a relatively minor offense. And therefore, we want to bring in a system of fines that is more or less consistent with the fine structure under that particular piece of legislation, which at its highest will be $3,500. But I want to ask this question, sir, and I promise not to be too long, or should I say not to be too much longer. A person who suffers in this way has an option of putting the wrongdoer in court and bringing a civil action and claim damages. I would venture, based on my experience, that while you may argue that it is just a noise, a person who sustains that, who has to suffer that in a repeated way, would certainly be able to recover much more than $500. So if an individual had to bring a civil case, I believe that they would find themselves liable to pay the injured party significantly more than $500 for that particular unlawful conduct. So if you look at the civil side of the law and the criminal side of the law, I don't think that you could even begin to say that the penalty that we impose of $500 comes anywhere near to the damages or to the value of the restitution that an injured party would benefit from. And it's not intended that they should be equal, but what I'm trying to say is, for those who feel that the fine should be a lot less, there's a solid argument to say that the fine could in fact be a lot more. Now, Mr. Speaker, everybody wants to know, well, how are you going to police this? I leave policing to the police. I will say that there are any number of offenses that people commit and figure that the police can't police or that the police can't investigate. But somehow or another, they find themselves before the law courts facing penalties. I have every confidence, sir, that the Barbados Police Service has the technology that is available to them, that is required for them to be able to handle investigations of this type. Now, there are no perfect penal systems. There's always going to be somebody who wants to find a way to get around the law, but we deal with that every day, sir. Mr. Speaker, you are an expert in criminal law, and every time one of your clients get charged, the first thing they say, it wasn't me. So you force the police now to try and prove that it was them. And there are methods available, and sometimes you win, but sometimes, sir, you lose. You satisfy the jury, it was in fact the person that we charged. So I have no doubt about the ability of the police to deal with these issues. I don't want, sir, to have to deploy large numbers of police officers to deal with this. What we want is for Barbadians to behave reasonably and rationally. If you know that there is a law against that kind of conduct, please, please, please do not say, I am going to be a scofflaw, they got to catch me. Because we will catch you. We will catch you. The purpose of a criminal statute is not by the passing of a legislative magic wand going to weed out bad behavior. It won't. It never has. We've passed laws against firearms. We've passed laws against sexual offenses. The laws that we pass do not by themselves change conduct. They don't. But we hope that by passing these laws, we engender in individuals, sir, a sense of responsibility, and they recognize that I really don't want to have to deal with the law courts. I don't want to have to suffer the indignity of being arrested, being charged, getting a ticket, spending money on this. Let me just take the bull out the kite and fly it. Everybody happy. Everybody's happy, sir. Mr. Speaker, it is a minor offense, yes. It is a minor offense as far as this statute and its construct is concerned. But for those Barbadians who have to suffer daily under the burden of a buzzing kite from morning until night, through the day into the next night, sir, it isn't minor at all. Now, Mr. Speaker, as I said, everybody wants us to deal with this. They want us to deal with the motorbikes. They want us to deal with all kinds of things. And we're going to get to them as soon as we can. But I want to say that in the context of things that you may consider minor, I want to serve notice, Mr. Speaker, that we are concluding the work on the legislation which is intended to compel individuals to clean up their properties. And I'm just I don't want to say firing the shot across the bow, but I'm just drawing a reference saying no. Because, you know, you may say this is my property, ain't gonna come at me. But the effect and the impact of your not keeping your property clean has the capacity, sir, of creating health hazards for other individuals, and not just the unsightly nature of your place. So that legislation, Mr. Speaker, it will not be an amendment under the Minor Offences Act. I'm only stretching your good nature by mentioning it, that while we may not see it as major, there are other minor things that we're going to get to. And cleaning up your property, keeping it clean, honoring the obligation to yourself and to your neighbors, that is going to come too. And over time, we're going to cover off as many of these minor things as possible, but we're using them, Mr. Speaker, to gradually improve the sense of responsibility and a discipline among Barbadians. Mr. Speaker, I don't want anybody to get charged under this bill. I don't want anybody to get a ticket under this bill. I want Barbadians to follow our rich tradition of kite flying and make the most beautiful kites in the world. And I want them to be able to keep those kites aloft for as long as it is safe to do so. But there's a responsibility on each of us to be our brother's keeper, and that includes, Mr. Speaker, doing the decent thing and eliminating the noise-making apparatus. That way everybody wins. The elderly will get a good night's sleep, and you get the pleasure of having your kite sail on our winds during the night without disturbing an individual. So I'm asking, sir, for the cooperation of Barbadians. Easter is coming. We don't want our law enforcement individuals to have to be pursuing this. Let us all be reasonable and remember that we live in a society where we all have to share. We share the same airspace, we share the same desires as a human being. Some of us cope better than others. But for those who are less able to cope with the noise, this law is to benefit them. I'm obliged to you, sir.
You're going to move the second.
This bill be read a second time.
I'd like to second that.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph. Sorry for St. Thomas.
Well, St. Joseph, sir, might be very well going somewhere else, but I know I will go nowhere else except home when I'm finished with this, sir. I want to thank you for the privilege and to thank the Honourable Member for St. Joseph and his team for framing this legislation to bring an element of discipline, peace, and serenity in my society, our society. I know, Mr. Speaker, that kite flying has been a cultural part of our being in Barbados. And I hope it will remain forever. But this cultural pastime that has helped to unleash the creativity and the spirit of making kites at Easter time for many generations must continue. Indeed, I have been an active member of the community where I live and the community life that I enjoyed as I intimately engaged as a young girl in making kites. And in our impoverished environments, we could not buy a kite. We could hardly buy the kite paper. However, we found creative ways of being able to make these kites that we could fly. So I know about a trash-borne kite, Mr. Speaker. You probably didn't live in rural Barbados, so you would know, or you may have been so well endowed that you could have bought a kite that was made by the guys, especially when you're going to up and on. You might have been able to have the opportunity, and therefore you would buy a kite.
I remember I fly kites when you don't know about the cord off for the flower bags.
Sir,
I fly kites with cord
sir,
off.
I would know that better than you. I'm older than you by far.
And then when you let them out,
yes, sir.
the pop.
Yeah, mine used to be too, so I believe that you copied the style from me. And the people in the St. Thomas environments and across the rest of Barbados, really, rural Barbados in particular. And so I like your spirit, Mr. Speaker, sir, in this respect. But we were able to make our trash bone kites, where we will go into the cane field and we will get. And then we had coconut bones. We will take the dry coconut leaves and we will cut out the thick vein from the center, and we made our kites. Some of them were small, but they were colorful, and they entertained us as we did the competition among ourselves in our villages and in our households to be able to see which kite was the most beautiful and which kite flew the highest with the same card from the flower bag and the other bags that we had that didn't only use to serve that purpose, though, you know, Mr. Speaker, because when you pulled out the card out of the flower bag, that is the flower bag that was used to make the bed that you will suffer cuscus grass. So I am talking history and the experience, and therefore, in the light that you have had that experience, sir, you're a proud Barbadian. Bless you, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, and that was not all. We will also use pieces of wood that the carpenter will be using in helping to build the toilet or whatever they were building. And we will take them and get the little fine nails. I don't remember what the nails were called then. And we will make our own kites. We will use newspaper. And our best glue would have been the flour that we will mix up and put it out to dry after we have put it into the frame and stuck on the paper, and we were good to go. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, sir, in our impoverished environs, our parents had a little sheet or two on the side, and we will go and tear off a piece of the sheet to make the kite tail. But we had our own time of using our creativity and the innate abilities we had with the skills to be happy in the villages and communities where we lived. And this is still continuing, Mr. Speaker. But, of course, our parents would have worked with us and to let us know they didn't have any money. And because we didn't have any money, all our energies went into the creativity of making. I am a strong supporter, Mr. Speaker, sir, of the kites being made. And over the years, some of the interests and the skills have waned with this attraction. However, thankfully, the kite flying competitions helped to resurrect this skill. And therefore, the honorable member for St. Joseph would have spoken about what happens in St. Joseph and indeed across the island, where persons have kite competitions, they get gifts and so on, to keep that part of our culture alive. Because we know that cultural penetration has caused us to be buying kites from overseas and losing the skill, as well as losing the, what do you call the funds that you pay to, when we are building the economy, we keep buying from overseas. The expression has gone from my head, no sir, but it will come back. We have been able to do things to be able to make ourselves creative. So these kite flying interests that capture the knowledge and the skills of Barbadians, we now see that it has gone beyond children doing it, but we have males who do it. And I want to highly commend those males. When I pass over by the junction to go over to the Globe Cinema, there used to be a truck there with a young man or some young men selling the kites. They were able to make a business out of it. I was talking about foreign exchange just now, Mr. Speaker, I beg your pardon. But these guys are able to make a business out of it, and you see a lot of it coming back into the system already again, and I love it, and I highly commend those persons who make the kites. And those are the ones that people add on the bull to, and it makes a lot of noise. And there's nothing wrong with hearing the kite in the daytime. But when it comes to nighttime, Mr. Speaker, that's when it is the biggest nuisance. And of course, my mother only had one son, Mr. Speaker, sir, but I would say it was the second boy. So I would go out and cut down a kite door, Mr. Speaker. And I did it as an adult, because I could not rest when I was living in King Garden. And I followed that kite flying all the way up to another section of King Garden. And I found it in the morning about 5 o'clock, Mr. Speaker. I cut it down. I started drill and drill and drill till it hit the ground. I've never seen another one in that general area or heard one since then. Until I even moved from there, I've never heard one. But I'm saying all of this, sir, to say that while there is a lot of entertainment, and while more mature people are getting involved to make it a business, and I agree, as I said, to reduce the foreign exchange and buying these kites that are being mass-produced, and then we're spending all of this money, I am happy that Barbadians have come back into themselves to understand they are creative and they can unleash the creativity in making the most colorful kites, despite whatever size or fashions or competitions. They are meaningfully engaged, and I think that's extremely important. I also want to say so, sir, while I strongly support the local business entities, I want to emphasize that the young entrepreneurs as well pay attention to what they are producing, and to talk to persons when they go to buy, to say to them, yes, you have the bull, but don't forget the people in the community. You all have your grandmothers, your grandfathers, the disabled, other people in the community, persons who are ill as a result of whatever reason, those who may have had surgery and recuperating, and somehow they cannot sleep in the day or night. It is not a happy experience, Mr. Speaker, and all of us in here know what it is like for a bull kite to be somewhere near our houses, and we cannot sleep after a long day. And you know what, Mr. Speaker, there's a good opportunity for me to say that Barbadians are of the opinion that when you're a politician, you only come in here and talk, and then you go home and rest. They are not aware, and we must educate our people that the role of a politician in this honorable chamber, I can't speak for the others, but I believe the others too, because if they have their own employment otherwise, or they're aspiring to be politicians, they still have to get a component of rest in order to be able to produce. So we don't only come here and talk, we work in the communities, we listen to people's concerns, we assist people in every possible way. Sometimes they even let the husband go back home. The husband is ignoring the wife, and you go to talk to him, and you're working like a counselor. There are problems with the children, you help to advise. The house, you give them ideas as to how to go about. You call up the agency, so our work is not just to come here and speak, but we are here also to listen to the residents, listen to everybody, and try to devise ways and means of minimizing these challenges that we have in our society. Barbados has been a peaceful place for so many generations. It has been one of the safest places on Mother Earth. And all of a sudden, we're losing that respect for others. We are losing the tolerance that we know has built this society. We are losing the camaraderie that would have come through, the community life and spirit that was unleashed across this island for people to work with each other and to help to lift up and motivate those who may be down and out when it comes to certain challenges they may have. And I want for this to happen again, Mr. Speaker, but there's so many niggling challenges coming through. Every day we are seeing something new. And this kite flying business in the night is the worst of it all at this time. It is the worst at this time. But Mr. Speaker, sir, you know, the burning of fire, burning of things in your backyard, and burning for 2 straight days, that too is adding to the illnesses with people with sinuses and so. But I'm not going to digress on that one this time, because I'm waiting for that kind of legislation to come as well, because people are still lighting fires 24/7. So to have to bother with the like flying and with the fire burning, and then the mufflers that are cut off with these bikes that are all over the place, and then the motor cars and all the other noises, Mr. Speaker, it is just making those of us who want to be stable, to be able to help others, making us just as uncomfortable. But what about those senior citizens? What about those little babies that might have been miserable all day? What about those in their nurseries? What about people in the children and the senior citizens in the senior homes? There are too many niggling problems, and the kite flying does not make life any more comfortable for them, sir. It really is a public nuisance, and I'm happy that the Honourable Minister and the team, the legal team, have come up with a pathway solution. And as he said, it's not something punitive, but we would wish people to adhere to the rules where we don't have to even deal with this legislation that is coming before us. We just want for those people, and the thing is that the cohort of those individuals that are really having these kites out all day, I know you like, Mr. Speaker, are not always young children or young people. Some very mature persons. I believe some women may be doing it too, but I mostly see men. And when you say what you have to say, they're highly annoyed. To listen to the calling program is not a comfortable thing at all. Perhaps it takes away from us, the politicians, being dealt with in a very negative way. But when people are calling from all areas in St. Michael, St. Lucie, St. Philip, St. Thomas, St. Joseph, and the other communities across Barbados, you hear kite flying. kite flying, kite flying. I've been to the doctor, I'm suffering with high blood pressure, but a kite was flying all day and all night. We're hearing ads coming on the radio from the airport where they're asking persons not to fly kites in the zone of the aircraft. And then every time you pass, you can see lots of kites flying in the air day and night. If an aircraft is passing over and this kite is really high, we don't know what might happen, then that will create the kind of tragedy or travesty that nobody wants to have. And therefore, I am supporting this piece of legislation, proposed legislation, to make sure that persons adhere to the law. Too many Barbadians, sir, are breaking the law. And they seem to think that they will get away with it. But it's only when, sir, the shoe is on your foot that you feel the pinch. And it is those persons who might be flying the kite all day and night, and they're not paying attention to anybody's feelings, to the hurt that they're imposing on people's lives. They can't rest, they can't go to work the next morning. If you're a security guard, sir, and you have to go to work for 6 o'clock in the morning, at 5 you have to be up. By the time you come in the evening at 5, you want to be able to rest. You're only a human being. But then you can't rest because the noise all over your house, all in your community, creating that big challenge of a nuisance. And therefore, I want to say how happy I am that the Honourable Member for St. Joseph and his legal team have worked on this piece of legislation. We need to get back to basics as a society. Good discipline. We must show empathy and sympathy for each other. We must be caring in a way and understanding. We must show the tolerance and the respect that are critical to be able to say we are a happy bunch of people on this little rock called Barbados. And to the time that many of us choose to do things our own way, and you're old and you're miserable, go and dribble. I hear some of them talk that. How can you go and dribble? You can't sleep, so you can't dribble. But only a human being can dribble down, Mr. Speaker, a person that is alive. And therefore, we need to be able to work not only with the young people in the community as they are now, and these kites flying and the different things that are happening, but our schools must be more prepared to work on discipline. Our homes first must be prepared to work on discipline and let our children know what is right from wrong. How you have to work with people to make them happy in your presence. Let them be comfortable. We need the intergenerational links to be functioning again if we are to turn our society around, not to the old time days as such, but to show that we are a mature nation, or we are maturing, and that there's mutual understanding and responsibility flowing in both directions among all of the people in this country called Barbados that has been our home. And our senior citizens, as you know, Mr. Speaker, you have a deep passion for them and those who are in the disabled community. And when we don't know what the future holds for us, we don't know how we may fall off a ladder and break a foot. We don't know if we may be walking and we get some kind of injury. We don't know if studying, we don't have the money to do things. We might come down with an aneurysm. We don't know what the future holds. So why not let us work together today to see how we could be more passionate, how we could be more caring, loving, and understanding of others. You know what, Mr. Speaker, when the shoe is on your foot is when you feel the pinch. And therefore, I want, sir, for us as a people to remember when we big up our society, and I'm talking to young people language, we're bigging up ourselves. When we show respect for the church is going on, a kite is over there, you can't even hear even though they have a speaker on. When you have the kite going on, and the old people are in the home, they can't hear, they can't rest. When you have it over their nursery, when you have it on the beach when you go to recreate, when all these wonderful parks that the National Conservation Commission is establishing for people to have spaces of peace and or serenity and to be able to relax, and the kites are flying there day and night. It is no comfort for anyone. And therefore, as I said, when the shoe is on our feet, then is the time that we feel the squeeze. And therefore, sir, as I come to a close, we need to get back to basics and turn that monster around. And people now require more peace within their lives than ever before. especially with the impact of COVID. There has been so much grief across this entire island and the world, Mr. Speaker. Families have lost 2 and 3 relatives at any one time because of COVID. Persons have lost their mothers, their fathers, their children, their nephews, their nieces. So you need that peace and tranquility to help you through your grieving moments. And if you can't get that with a kite flying all over, you can't use the phone unless you're speaking at the loudest sound in order to be able to understand what the person on the other end of the line is saying. You can't listen to the TV, or you have to turn it up so hard because it's buzz, buzz, buzz all the time. It is not fair to anybody. I don't care what color or class or creed those individuals are. I don't care what communities they are living in. As far as I am concerned, and I witness the kite flying at night is across the entire island. And we need to be more conscious as to what our actions are, and to be able to empathize with others and put yourself in my place. Were it me, would I like that to be happening to me? Would I want that nuisance around me or my house or my family that we can't rest? And therefore, we need to get back to basics in that respect. Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the Honourable Minister for and his team for the actions that they have sought to pursue today. And I believe that the educational component has to go with this legislation now. Because a lot of people will not listen to what is taking place in here. And unless the Government Information Service and other entities, we use the social media platforms to be able to reach out and let others know it is an offense to fly kites with a bull in the night. That will create a nuisance for others. A lot of people may not get the message. And the message must be well sent in order for persons to understand. So if somebody has to come, a young man, a rapper, a young woman, or whatever solo is, and make a tune out of it, and it has to be splashed on our TV, it has to be on our phone and all the other digital platforms we have, we're going to have to do that, because not everybody will hear what we're saying. And it is not a punitive measure, as I said. It is for us to be able to get that peace and tranquility that all of us require at some point in time. Every human being needs to get a good, long rest, whether they're ill or mobile or whichever the situation is. And so I want to highly commend the minister. Our nation builders are our seniors. And we know how our numbers are escalating with senior citizens who are at home all day long, as I said earlier, in a nursing home, or who would want to see the kite flying in the daytime as part of an distraction, but not have anything to inhibit them from having a proper rest in the night. And so, sir, I want to indicate my support for this piece of legislation that we are coming with. I'll tell you the name now, sir, the Minor Offences Act of 2023. I want to lend my support, and I want to encourage Barbadians to work and stick within the law. And when we stick within the law, we do not have to worry about anything else. Whether we are driving, flying a kite, riding a bike, using abusive language, breaking the red lights, whatever it is, once we live within the law, as we have as a people before, when I believe our population was even bigger, we can do it again. But all institutions must come together. Faith-based groups, as I said earlier, the schools, the community groups, everybody, and present to the folk. These are the things that we have grown accustomed to doing. These are the things that we must stick to or adhere to if we are to be a cohesive society, sharing and caring and giving back to everybody, so that this continues to be the happy place that we have made it to be because of working together to save our nation. And so, Mr. Speaker, I highly commend this exercise, and I pray that persons will continue to adhere to the laws to make sure that they do the right thing, and that persons who are in communities and wherever they're else across this island, whether they be visitors or locals or not, that people feel more comfortable in the home, particularly at night. And I trust that they will hear, within the hearing of the voice of the Honourable Minister, sir, and others, that they will adhere to it, because they do not know when their day may come, when they have to be home for 6 weeks with illness, and that kind of noise continues, then it impacts on them. You don't have to have the experience to be able to respect what the principles are as outlined in this particular piece of legislation. And so, sir, I lend my support to this piece of legislation. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member St. Joseph. Second time. The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Speaker, I beg to move that you do now leave the chair and that this House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of the bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
We're trying to figure out when we can, if adjourn it to Monday or Tuesday. So we're trying to figure out to adjourn to Monday or after this. Is here? We can,
This Honourable House is now in committee.
maybe not.
Clause 1.
Beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
Made second.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Beg to move, Mr. Chair, that clause 3 stand part.
Made second.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
Made second.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Schedule.
Beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
Made second.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Beg to move that you do not report His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable Member St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited the Minor Offences Amendment Act 2023.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited.
Recommittal of government notices, sir. You've noticed that.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the Child Protection Bill 2023.
Recommittal of first readings of bills.
Honourable Member St. Michael South.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Child Protection Bill 2023.
The question is that the bill be read a first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now stand suspended until 4:30.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until 4:30 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This chamber stands suspended until 4:30 p.m.